Hello and welcome to Inside Edition Examines Cults. I'm Mara Montalbano. In 1997, the Heaven's Gate cult became known for the worst reason, a mass suicide that left 39 members dead. Families mourned as they learned their loved ones had died.
It was obviously a big mistake, and it was, probably the worst day of my life.
A mother still grieves for a son lost, not to murder, but to the mental control of the Heaven's Gate cult and its delusional leader.
I'm Doe, for starters.
The man,
Your only chance to survive
the message,
or evacuate is to leave with us.
the result. A year ago, this exclusive Rancho Santa Fe mansion was transformed into a macabre mortuary. 39 bodies, all dressed in ritualistic fashion, were found inside, each the victim of a lethal concoction of drugs and dreams. That's something. You wear it as a remembrance?
Yeah, just
Nancy Brown still wears the ring her son David Moore wore the day he took his life here. A color Xerox sheet chronicles the belongings he had at his death. 20 years after he joined the group, 20 years in which she saw him only twice.
You kept the door open for David for 20 years, didn't
I
you?
did, and it was very sad. When Heaven's Gate closed, I thought, for me, the gate closed and left, me and the other families behind. I'll never see them again.
It was the worst mass suicide in U.S. history, and a year later, there is still an eeriness that hovers over this house.
I've never forgotten that day or those people.
Lawrence Jimenez was here the day of the suicide. He was supposed to clean the pool, but somehow, sensing danger, turned back at the front gate.
I assume you won't be back up here anytime
Oh,
soon.
never.
And a year later, the Heaven's Gate website is still there, though it's unclear how many followers remain. L.J. West is a professor of psychiatry at UCLA and a cult expert.
I think there are probably still a few around who cling to the belief that was inculcated in them before, but generally speaking, I'd say it's over.
Is it? Rio D'Angelo should know. He is a Heaven's Gate member who survived, the one who discovered the bodies.
The Heaven's Gate class, Heaven's Gate Monastery, does not exist any longer. However, there are people that were members at one time that are still here.
That's little comfort for this mother with her ever-haunting questions about her son's last moments.
Did he go happily, joyfully right up to his last conscious thought, or was there a flicker of, oh no, maybe I shouldn't have done this? I'll never know.
This survivor is speaking out for the first time about her harrowing life inside the notorious Heaven's Gate cult, led by wacko Marshall Applewhite.
You have to trust me. You have to believe me.
Jana Gibbons was a vulnerable 16-year-old when she moved into the mansion. She lived there for 5 years. Now she's talking to ABC's Diane Sawyer.
My guess is 3/4 of the people never set foot out the door, and I was one of them. Ever. Right, and there probably wasn't even any open windows. It was like a little spaceship.
This is never-before-seen home video inside the cult, where every minute was controlled, including when and how they slept.
We were divided into 3 shifts. 3 people shared a bed.
Showers were cut off at 6 minutes. There were also rules about not talking. Jana says she went for years without speaking. Finally, she was permitted to find work as a waitress.
Luckily, we did start restaurant jobs at the very end because I hadn't spoken probably in 4 years.
That taste of freedom convinced Jana it was time to escape.
39 to beam up. Thank you.
These giddy farewell videos were recorded by the cultists, knowing they were about to commit mass suicide. They were brainwashed into believing Earth was about to be destroyed, and they had to board an alien spaceship that would transport them to a higher level of existence.
Your only chance to survive or evacuate is to leave with us.
Among the dead, the brother of Star Trek legend Nichelle Nichols.
I'm the happiest person in the world.
As for Jana Gibbons, she says she's lucky she survived Heaven's Gate.
You have to decide, what am I going to believe, what am I not going to believe? I made the decision to leave.
You have to trust me. You have to believe me.
He's one of the most notorious cult leaders in American history, Marshall Applewhite, known by his followers as Doe. But now we know there was also a female cult leader who first recruited Applegate to the leadership ranks. Never-before-seen footage shows Bonnie Nettles, who went by the name T.
All the ones that you considered your family really is not your family.
All these years later, we're now learning that the cult leaders call themselves Doe and T because they were huge fans of The Sound of Music and the Julie Andrews classic song, Do Re Mi.
Do re mi fa sol la ti.
They were fans of musical theater. It was after the Sound of Music song, Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do.
It's just one of the bizarre revelations that director Clay Twill exposes in the docuseries Heaven's Gate, The Cult of Cults, now streaming on HBO Max. Applegate convinced 38 followers, who are all dressed in identical clothing down to the Nike sneakers, to take their lives in 1997 after making the preposterous claim that upon mass suicide, they would all be elevated to an extraterrestrial alien spacecraft. One cult member, it can now be told, was the brother of Star Trek legend Nichelle Nichols.
Starfleet Command, yes, sir.
In newly unearthed footage, we see Thomas Nichols express his devotion to Heaven's Gate.
I'm the happiest person in the world.
Is this a cult if I ever heard one? Yes, it is. It's a cult. I mean, it's the cult of cults.
If you look at the way in which Heaven's Gate started, it started in a time of social chaos. And that is a breeding ground for a lot of these types of cults. And so, we're in a time of social chaos now. And so I think the idea that something like this could happen again is pretty prevalent.
Coming up, another high-profile cult making headlines, NXIVM. We'll tell you about the celebrities involved and how it all came crashing down after the break.
The suspected head of an alleged cult that reportedly branded female members now faces charges in the United States after he was arrested and extradited from Mexico. With him at the time, but not arrested, was a star of the TV show Smallville. In fact, another actress from the show reportedly was once a member of the group. Stephen Fabian has more on the Smallville connection.
It's a shocking claim about an actress from the TV show Smallville.
Hey, Clark.
Allison Mack played a high school student in Smallville who had a crush on young Superman. Smallville was a huge hit for the CW network. It ended its 10-year run in 2011. It's now being revealed that Allison Mack is a follower of a notorious guru who has been accused of having his initials branded on some of his followers like cattle.
I started to transform in a way that I never expected.
Mack can be seen on this cell phone video taken this week as federal police in Mexico arrested the guru, Keith Raniere, for extradition back to the U.S. on sex trafficking charges.
We're gonna follow them. Let's go, you guys.
Raniere is the controversial founder of a self-help group called NXIVM. Authorities say several of his followers were required to have his initials branded into their pelvic area with a device that dermatologist Dr. Doris Day says would be agonizing to experience.
This would be unbearable. I would never consider doing this without using an anesthetic.
I spoke to Frank Parlato, a former publicist for NXIVM, who was the first to expose the story.
Allison had a very prominent role. She's completely enamored with Raniere and completely under his thrall.
Another actress from Smallville, Kristen Krug, who played Superman's love interest, Lana Lang, was also once linked to Raniere's group.
When they recruited Allison and Kristen, they were used as poster girls for normalizing the group. Because why would beautiful, famous TV stars at the height of their career join a cult?
Krug reportedly severed ties with the group in 2012 after sordid allegations against Raniere came to light. Raniere is now back in the U.S. and being held without bail.
Last time we told you about the two Smallville actresses who've been linked to an alleged sex cult. Now one of them is speaking out, saying she's horrified and disgusted by what she thought was a self-help group. Diane McInerney has more.
Actress Kristen Krug from TV Smallville says she is embarrassed over her links to a controversial self-help group that allegedly turned into a sex cult. The 35-year-old star tweeted, "I am deeply disturbed and embarrassed to have been associated with the group's charismatic leader, Keith Raniere, who is accused of branding women like cattle with a cauterizing pen similar to this one." The Smallville actress says she began her association with this self-help group hoping it would help her overcome her shyness. She insists she left 5 years ago. The accusations that I was in the inner circle or recruited women as sex slaves are blatantly false, Krug says. During my time, I never experienced any illegal or nefarious activity. I am horrified and disgusted by what has come out.
You're stronger than me.
Krug played Lana Lang, Superman's girlfriend, on Smallville. Another Smallville star, Allison Mack, is not named in the criminal complaint, but is believed to be unindicted co-conspirator number 1, who allegedly directed their slaves to have sex with Raniere. Video obtained by Inside Edition shows Mack in 2015 singing at a birthday celebration for Raniere. The party lasted a full week. Mack is described in a criminal complaint as a direct slave of Raniere's. She was present when Raniere was arrested by federal police in Mexico.
We're gonna follow them. Let's go, you guys.
The criminal complaint says a secret society was made up of slaves and masters. During the branding ceremonies, slaves were required to be fully naked, and the master would order one slave to film while the others held down the slave being branded. It says the brand consisted of Raniere's initials, KR. But former insider Frank Parlato says when the brand is turned, you can also see initials AM for Allison Mack.
It marks them as lifelong slaves who have taken the vow for lifelong obedience to Keith Raniere and Allison Mack.
According to the criminal complaint, Raniere is known to sexually prefer women who are exceptionally thin. Part of
Raniere's manipulative control of the women is to keep them on low-calorie diets. No meat, low protein, essentially a concentration camp-style diet.
Were major Hollywood stars being targeted by an alleged sex cult that's been making headlines across the country. Reports say actress Emma Watson and singer Kelly Clarkson were both contacted by a high-ranking member of the group. Now the question is, was it an attempt to recruit them?
Did an alleged sex cult try to recruit Kelly Clarkson and Emma Watson? The superstar singer and the Beauty and the Beast actress were reportedly targeted by actress Allison Mack, a leader of a controversial self-help group who starred in TV Smallville. In July 2013, Mack tweeted Kelly Clarkson, "I heard through the grapevine that you're a fan of Smallville. I'm a fan of yours as well. I'd love to chat sometime." Mack also sent Emma Watson this tweet, "I'm a fellow actress like yourself and involved in an amazing women's movement I think you'd dig. I'd love to chat if you're open." It's unclear if either Clarkson or Watson ever responded to the invitations.
India?
This young woman, India Oxenberg, is reportedly a member of the self-help group NXIVM. India is also the daughter of former Dynasty star Katherine Oxenberg. She declined to talk about the group.
Not right now, thank you very much.
Despite her mother's wealth and fame, India now works at a small vegetarian cafe in Manhattan. She and her mom are estranged, and Oxenberg has denounced Keith Raniere, the controversial leader of the self-help group, who was charged by the feds with alleged sex trafficking.
He finally needs to be held accountable for every single woman and child that he's ever harmed, abused, exploited, and my daughter is one of those. So this is a very personal fight for me.
She also had this message for her 26-year-old daughter.
I love you, come home.
Coming up, NXIVM was known for branding its members. But what did that feel like? We'll hear from one member who went through the ritual.
She's best known for her star-making role on TV's original Dynasty. But today, actress Katherine Oxenberg is playing a very different role. She's a crusader on a desperate bid to rescue her daughter India from what some are calling a dangerous sex cult.
You were part of this group. You introduced India to it.
Yeah, I did.
Do you feel a sense of guilt?
I felt tremendous guilt.
The organization NXIVM billed itself as a self-help group. Its leader is the charismatic Keith Raniere.
Somewhere deep down, I knew this was a bogus scam.
Katherine got out in 2011, but India stayed and fell under Raniere's spell. Raniere reportedly used actress Allison Mack, the star of TV's Smallville, to help him recruit other attractive young women. Some of the women were branded like cattle with Raniere's initials, using a cauterizing pen like this one.
She admitted to me that she had been branded, and she didn't think that it was problematic.
When you heard that she had been branded and she was okay with it, what was your reaction?
Really sad. Really, it's like, what have they done? What have they, how have they spun this to make it a good thing for women to be doing to themselves and others? So that was really, really hard to figure out. How do you make sense of that?
Katherine has just written a book, Captive, a mother's crusade to save her daughter from a terrifying cult. Thanks in part to her, Raniere and Mack were both arrested earlier this year on sex trafficking charges. That's when she says India finally broke free.
We are communicating again, and she has asked me to be her spokesperson. She said, Mom, if you're going to speak for me, I'm going to give you a script.
Show me the script.
Okay, this is about India. She is moving on with her life. It's a complex situation, but she understands her mom's struggle, that's me, and the people involved. She's doing really well. She is doing really well.
Where is she now?
Well, I can't say because it's not on my script, is it? But she's safe.
She's safe.
She's safe, yes.
She's an actress who found herself trapped in the notorious sex cult known as NXIVM. She was branded with the cult leader's initials, and now she's speaking with our Diane McInerney about how she was branded and brainwashed.
The woman who was branded during a secret cult ritual is speaking about her ordeal.
Imagine somebody taking a lit match to the most sensitive area of your body and dragging it across your flesh very slowly.
Actress Sarah Edmonson joined the personal growth group NXIVM, led by Keith Raniere. Edmonson was selected to join a secret sisterhood within NXIVM, and as part of the initiation, she had KR, Keith Raniere's initials, branded into her skin with a cauterizing pen like this one.
That must have hurt. Oh God, it was horrific. The whole point was to experience pain and to overcome the pain to be really strong. So they cut our flesh open without anesthetic.
How long did it last?
Somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes.
In her new book, Scarred, Edmonson writes about the day she realized Raniere was a sexual predator.
You write, oh my God, I'm in a cult. Keith's a sociopath who for years has been training women to worship him so that they'll have sex with him. How did you feel? Did you feel betrayed? It was a betrayal of the deepest level. I mean, my whole life got ripped out from underneath me. It was incredibly traumatic.
Another member of NXIVM was the daughter of actress Katherine Oxenberg, famous for her role in the 1980 show Dynasty.
I almost lost a child, and so I take this very seriously.
Oxenberg is executive producer of a new Lifetime TV movie, Escaping the NXIVM Cult, a mother's fight to save her daughter, premiering Saturday.
Many have spoken of me as the chosen one.
Oxenberg hopes the movie will draw attention to cults that prey on victims.
If I can help other families avoid the pain and suffering that my family went through, then that makes it worthwhile.
Keith Raniere was in fact sentenced to 120 years behind bars for racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Coming up, a famous musician actually grew up in a cult. We'll hear his story after the break.
Mikel Jolet is the singer for the band The Airborne Toxic Event, and he had a childhood unlike any other. He and his brother grew up in a cult called Synanon.
We were essentially born in an orphanage inside a cult and lived there till I was nearly 4, he was nearly 7, and then we had to escape. We lived on the run for a while. A lot of different things happened to us along the way.
Jolet's story of growing up in and escaping from Synanon is recounted in his new autobiography, Hollywood Park.
Synanon was a place that started for a bunch of dope fiends in the 60s to get clean off of heroin. That's really what it started as. A bunch of guys that had been in AA, and they set up a place for everyone to live because they wanted to help other addicts, and they didn't think AA went far enough for heroin addicts. So they wanted to have a more sort of intense version of that. And that's what they did, and then it worked for a long time. Good 10, 15 years. It helped a lot of people get clean off heroin. My dad was one of those people. My dad had done some time in prison, and when he got out, he had a heroin addiction that he'd established in jail, and he OD'd, and then someone dropped him off at Synanon, and then he got clean, and he turned it around. He never went back on drugs, never went back to crack. He never got a parking ticket.
You know, my dad wishes he was in the band, man. He's like, sometimes he'll be like, yo, can I come sing on stage? I'm like, Dad, come on. He's got a good voice though. Like, he can actually sing really well.
He's got a long sustain.
He does, and he's got this deep baritone.
So Synanon was good at a few things. And then what happened was lifestylers started moving in, the non-addicts, what they called the squares. Those were people, a lot of them were intellectuals and activists, and that's what my mom was. My mom was a free speech activist from Berkeley. She moved in to change the world because it started to have this idea that if we apply these same principles, we can change the world. And then at that point, it became the insular society. And then as happens with insular societies, the power starts to be in the hands of too few. There's this leader named Chuck, and Chuck started doing all this crazy stuff like breaking up marriages and forcing vasectomies, forcing abortions, punishing people with violence, hoarding guns and weapons and training these sort of military type goons. And it just went crazy. And then, at some point, a bunch of people figured that out and left and escaped because the whole thing kind of spiraled into madness.
And that is where Jolet spent his childhood.
Because we didn't know what a mom or a dad or a grandma was. We didn't have Christmas or Passover or birthdays. We were very much in this difficult situation. There was a lot of abuse. And it was an orphanage. We were orphans. And then one day, this woman shows up with a shaved head, because everyone had shaved heads, and she's like, I'm your mom. And we were like, what's a mom? We didn't know what a mom was. But we had to escape, so we left with her. And we were always told the bad men are going to come, the bad men are going to come. So we never were allowed to go outside. And this is when we were living in East Oakland and Berkeley, and we're living on food stamps and government cheese.
But things got better for Jolet. He grew up to graduate from Stanford University with honors. He worked as a journalist, and in 2006, the airborne toxic event formed and his career took off.
You guys look this way, right here.
Yeah, straight ahead, please.
I'm pretty happy with my career. My 12-year-old self is like, this is awesome. It's like the professional athlete, rock and roll singer, or kind of like, those are like your maybe professional skateboarder, I don't know. My theory is that the best art will come from unpacking my struggle. Springsteen has this idea that you don't give people your solutions, you give them your struggle. And different people have different struggles. This happened to be my struggle. And so it was sort of more like if I was going to do that, it required this level of examination and sort of forthrightness and honesty and revelation about my past, because that is what we went through. So it's not so much that I set out to write a book about cults and families and addiction and the search for true love, which is what my book is about. It's that I really wanted to write a book that dealt with my sort of biggest joys and deepest struggles, and those things just happened to be that.
What an inspiring story. Up next, did you love the Duggar family? Now one member is speaking out about how her childhood felt like a cult to her.
Ginger Duggar was one of the 19 kids and counting who grew up on TV.
This is the story of my family.
Now she likens her childhood to a cult.
It wasn't until I got older I started to look back on those years and realize that it was based in fear. Those teachings were based in fear, manipulation, control, and superstition.
Fear of what?
Fear of God coming down on me and waiting to get me at any turn.
Would you characterize it as a cult?
I would say it was cult-like in nature.
Ginger is now 29 and married with 2 children and lives in LA. Her just-published memoir, Becoming Free Indeed, is already a bestseller.
It is the most terrifying thing I've ever done because all of my friends and many of my loved ones are still in this community.
She says her husband, Jeremy Volo, had to fill out a 50-page questionnaire just to get permission to date her with chaperones. She was also not allowed to watch movies. Her first was, get this.
Good morning!
Morning!
The Truman Show, about a man who doesn't know his life's a reality show. Ginger is the 6th oldest of the 19 Duggar children. She says she still FaceTimes with her family, but she has not spoken to her brother Josh in years. He is now serving 12 years in federal prison on child pornography charges.
My heart just breaks for the victims and their families.
Brandy Melville, a clothing store or a cult? We'll hear from one former worker about what she saw while working there.
Social media is filled with teens showing off their clothes from Brandy Melville.
The chain was able to become incredibly popular because it built this social media empire where it had a lot of the teenage girls who worked in stores also served as de facto models.
Brandy Melville has more than 40 stores in the U.S. and nearly 100 worldwide. Now a new documentary is shining light on what's being called a toxic culture behind the scenes at their stores. The documentary, airing on Max, is titled Brandy Hellville and the Cult of Fast Fashion.
There was no white people working in the stockroom. If you're white, you had to be in sight.
Black and Latina employees ended up in the stockroom, kind of hidden more and more.
21-year-old Brianna Gomez started working at a Brandy Melville store in California when she was just 15.
Many girls who worked there were minors. I would say we had more people under the age of 18. It just doesn't seem logical to have little girls running a store.
They wanted to reach this very thin, white, wealthy teenage girl.
Business Insider's Kate Taylor investigated Brandy Melville and calls it an evil cult teen brand.
The biggest problems I saw with Brandy Melville was the racist hiring practices, the sexual exploitations of workers. People said that they felt like they had to change in front of these older male higher-ups or their jobs could be at risk.
Satanists, are they cult members or just following their religion? Inside Edition explored the group more deeply.
It's a beautiful day here at the state capitol. Great day to be a Satanist. I believe it, and I'm very excited about it.
Are they evil or just misunderstood?
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan. Hail Satan. Hail Satan.
The documentary, Hail Satan, explores those questions while following the rise of the Satanic Temple. Director Penny Lane says the creation of the film took her on a spiritual and educational journey.
Within 3 years, they had at least 50,000 members. And within 6 years, which is the amount of time the film covers, they have over 100,000 members. Dozens of chapters have popped up all around the United States and increasingly abroad as well.
A goal of her film was to debunk myths and misconceptions about this religion.
Modern Satanism is an atheistic religion. There's no sort of belief in supernatural deities at the core. What they do have is a shared belief and understanding of the power of mythology, art, ritual in everyday life, and in forming community and in allowing you to do good works in the world. So that was a big surprise because who knew? That's what Satanists believed. I didn't know.
And a tenet of the religion is activism. The film shows how the Satanic Temple organizes to fight for equal representation of religions in government. Members took their cause to Arkansas, where a state senator pushed to erect a monument of the 10 Commandments on the grounds of the state capitol.
State officials have put up a 10 Commandments monument on government property.
Satanists are demanding equal rights.
I am a tax-paying member of Arkansas, and I don't want that there.
The temple raised more than $20,000 to commission a statue of the deity Baphomet, hoping to place it next to the 10 Commandments.
Here are two religious faiths that disagree with one another about some fundamental things. What do we think the role of the government should be?
Lane interviewed many members across the country who say they found a place in the Satanic Temple after feeling out of place in other religions.
Satanism is looking out for the other, because we are the other.
I am following a code of ethics, having fellowship with brethren. Why can't that be a religion?
Despite spending years following the temple and its members, as well as becoming close to some of them, Penny Lane says she isn't a convert.
It made me respect religion in a whole new way. It made me think about the possibilities for what religion could be in the future. I always thought religion was essentially an anti-modern phenomenon that would be better off in the trash can. I don't feel that way anymore. I think religion's great.
Hail Satan is playing in theaters across the country.
Coming up, a cult that called for no touching between family members. We'll explore a Catholic splinter group that pulled in many families in Boston.
Patricia Chadwick grew up in what she calls a cult that was founded by an excommunicated Catholic priest.
I was raised in St. Benedict Center within a religious community that was called the Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. My early childhood memories are really wonderful. I was in essence born into this religious community. It was founded when I was 5 months old. And the men and women were all young. Many of them had gone through the war, World War II. Many of them were being educated at Harvard and Radcliffe. This was a very intellectual group of people. Under the auspices and the leadership of a Jesuit Catholic priest named Leonard Feeney, they held very strong views about one dogma of the Catholic faith, which said that you have to be Catholic to go to heaven.
Eventually, Father Feeney was no longer allowed to be a priest in the Boston diocese, and in 1949, the group broke off and took the name Slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Patricia said the environment was initially fun, but things eventually took a turn.
By the time I was 4 years old, all the grown-ups had changed their name. And my mother, whom everybody had called Betsy, was now known as Sister Elizabeth Ann. And my dad, who everybody called Jim, was Brother James Aloysius. And I had to refer to them that way.
Patricia said she was taught that her community were the only good people in the world, and a woman named Sister Catherine often oversaw the children.
None of that bothered me as long as I was there with my family. But shortly after my 6th birthday, and I remember the day very well, in 1954, it was November 21st. We little girls were known as little sisters, and the grown women were known as big sisters, the little boys, little brothers, and big brothers. And that started an entire change in the entire structure of our life. My father used to love to sing songs to us, and that was all gone. We now lived a life very much in silence. There were no bedtime stories. It was rules, and they were enforced very strongly.
The rules included not being able to touch her siblings.
Sister Catherine set new regulations. She came up with a punishment that she called the Big Punisher, and it was a 2.5, 3 foot piece of rubber hose, garden hose, that was used for punishment for things that you could not even imagine were really bad. You know, giggling, breaking silence, not turning your lights out at night when you should. By the time I was 17 years old, Sister Catherine made the decision that I was, in essence, destroying her vision. I was a temptation of sorts to others, even though I didn't know a thing about procreation, what it meant, or anything. And so, in my senior year of high school, she called me in one day and, in essence, told me that I would have to leave.
She was sent to live with her father's relatives, but eventually Patricia's parents and siblings left the group as well, and they were able to reunite. She has now written a book called Little Sister about her experience.
I think We were a very lucky family. There's never been any anger. And I've been asked, would I change things in the path of my life? And while of course I would have loved to have spent more time with my parents, I would have done anything not to have the beatings or watch other children get beaten the way they were. I've actually come to the realization that the wonderful life I have, the husband I have, the children I have, the wonderful career I've had, all of that might never have happened if I said, oh, if only, if only.
Coming up after the break, how do you get someone out of a cult? We'll talk with an expert. Sadly, cults and conspiracy theories are nothing new. One man has spent decades helping people to see the truth and save themselves. We sat down with Joe Simhart to hear how he gets people out of cults.
The Cosmic Instruction Manual, an emergency remedial edition created by Mission Control.
Rick Larson is reading an excerpt from a text.
You can see that. The cover says ET, so extraterrestrial 101.
That ended up in his family's home nearly 30 years ago. That's when his wife Helen became involved in a group named the Extraterrestrial Earth Mission.
The cult completely took over her life for a number of months.
Helen became involved after a trip to Arizona, where she met two women who brought her to gatherings.
She became completely brainwashed, came back home. I picked her up at the airport in Perth afterwards, and I could see that she'd been completely changed by this group's techniques.
Helen is not alone. Some experts estimate that hundreds of thousands of Americans belong to a cult at any given time.
She was not gullible at all, but she was vulnerable. And so she was looking for purpose.
That's where cult interventionists step in.
My name is Joe Simhart. I'm known as a cult information specialist. Cult intervention is not to get people out of a cult, it's to help them to choose their way out of it.
According to Joe, a cult is a group with a self-sealing social system.
It's maintaining its own definition of reality, and it's self-sealing and kind of like an echo chamber. The people all feed into the central idea of the leader, and the leader controls it. That's generally an unhealthy situation.
Joe's methods involve having a discussion with the affected person, during which he will ask questions and offer additional information.
Usually that's done by surprise because people in cultic groups do not want to meet with a cult expert. You know, they don't think they're in a cult, they don't think there's a problem.
He usually works alongside the members' loved ones to bring them back to reality.
They love their family, and they're conflicted by the group saying you can't be with their family.
Joe says it's important the member knows they can stop the discussion or ask him to leave at any time.
Well, if you can get through the first day and into the second day, normally you're going to have a successful intervention. Because by that time, the person is finding value in what I'm saying.
Joe has been performing interventions for nearly 40 years, ever since he left a group he calls a cult.
It was called Summit Lighthouse and Church Universal and Triumphant, and I was involved with it for about a year and a half. I noticed some serious problems. The idea behind the groups was to transform the self and then to help transform the world into a better, more holy place. The leaders didn't seem to be living according to the strict codes of ethics that the members were expected to live by. You know, I found out that the leadership was eating meat and ice cream, and that was forbidden. And I began to research the whole background of it, and I had a clearer head, you know, things cleared up in my head.
He separated himself from the group after months of research and discussion with other skeptical members. But his first real intervention began as an accident.
I was doing portraits at a mall in Santa Fe in New Mexico, and a young woman, she was 19, approached me to do a portrait of her from a photograph for her fiance.
The young woman began recruiting him into a small church she was a part of, which Joe concluded was a cult.
I kind of let her recruit me, but then I kept asking her questions. And she got curious about why I knew so much about the Bible. And that opened her eyes to show that her preacher was really quite manipulative and misusing these scriptures.
Joe helped reunite the young woman with her family, whom she hadn't seen for more than 6 months. He's been helping people ever since, including Helen and Rick.
She was told the mission was more important than the family. So you might love your family, but hey guys, we've got a planet to save here.
Helen had moved to another city to live with members of the cult, leaving behind her husband and their 3 teenage children.
She had no job. She had a little bit of money, but not much. There was nothing to do all day except read group materials, listen to group tapes, watch group videos.
That's when Joe intervened. He and another colleague flew to Australia to meet with Helen. Eventually, she decided to come back home.
She just needed to solidify her family relationships again and understand what she'd been subjected to and how wrong it was. One of the things we've learned, is that you don't put a lot of work into a marriage to throw it away too easily. The whole experience made our marriage stronger.
Helen and Rick wrote a book together about their experience years later. Today, Rick is involved in volunteer organizations that help support families like his.
I just thought I'd do my best to make sure that other people were not treated as Helen was.
Thanks for watching Inside Edition Examines Cults. I'm Mara Montalbano. Stick with the stream for more from Inside Edition.